France demolished Ireland in Paris as Italy shock Scotland again in Rome with the Calcutta Cup looming. Welcome back to the Rock and Roll Show. It's two very different rugby moods on the Rock and Roll Show this week, with a very happy Englishman in Dom Leach. Dom, how are you feeling after another England win?
Yeah, great, and it's always great. It's always better to do it against the Welsh as well. So home soil victory against our next door neighbours. It couldn't be too much better. I mean, it would have been nicer to put the 50 on them, but you can't always take such liberties. So we'll take what we've got and run with it for the next game against Scotland. Because although they didn't have the best game against Italy, going up to Edinburgh and playing at Murrayfield is no mean feat. So it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, so they certainly turn it on against you lot in Murrayfield for sure. On the England side, it was very good. On the Irish side, it was it was just about as bad as it could have gone, really. 36 points to 14 to France in Paris on that Thursday night game. It was billed as one of the bigger games of the weekend, probably. With two sort of the previous Six Nations winners, but I mean the gulf between the two sides on the day was just absolutely massive. What did you make of the game, Don?
I thought Ireland were very lacklustre. Obviously, that first half it was like no one really showed up. But I also didn't think France blew them away. I think they were very quick. They had good hands, and that speed to set and everything was very good. And when it's close quarters, they go very flat and they like to just pass it down the line just with rapid pace. And that's clearly something they've been practicing, and it was working very well. They got a couple of tries from it. But as I say, they didn't blow them away. At that second half, they had the grounds to go on and score so many more points. It should have been a bigger scoreline. But yeah, to only score, two tries in the second half, it wasn't... I feel like they could have done more damage, but I also think that the bench that Ireland brought on really saved their bacon a little bit. Timoney was brilliant when he came onto the pitch. I thought Stu McCloskey had a really good game as well. There was a couple flying about who, really showed what they could do. But as an Irish fan and someone who, lives and breathes it, how disappointing was it for you?
It was as bad as I've seen it for a while, really. The South Africa game and the last game in the autumn, it was pretty dire to watch in terms of just camped on your own line for most of the game and just really not able to get out. This was sort of just as you mentioned in that first half, just sort of gung-ho, 22-0 at half-time. Just couldn't live with them, Dom, to be honest, and it was sort of a bit of a worry coming into this tournament for the Irish that it would be a bit of it would have to be a transition because they've got so many players currently out injured and they've got a bit of an edging squad as well. They sort of, would they struggle to compete with teams like France and England, and it has transpired like that in Paris. I thought they started well. It was the opening 10 minutes were not too bad. I think they tried to kick a lot throughout the whole game. It just wasn't kick to compete, and I think Stockdale was getting up there, but he wasn't winning it quite. And I just think it was maybe just the wrong game plan to sort of just kick to compete so often, but maybe that's just how they were trying to sort of suck France into their game plan, but it just flat out didn't work. There was just a real sort of lack of, I think it was one of the tries. It was the Olivon try, the third try. It's just I was watching it back the other day. It's just a real sort of a lack of intensity in defence, and I think any time you sort of half switch off against these teams, you're going to get punished. And Ireland switched off a couple of times. That first try, could they have done better to stop the LBRA? I sort of think so. I mean, the guy literally stops. He gets tackled by Sam Prendergast and somehow manages to get up and go round the last defender. It's just, it was as bad as it could have been for probably about those 60 minutes, and then, as you say, the bench came on. Real good signs from Timoney. I'd probably actually expect Timoney to start this week.
Yeah.
Just for that impact that he's brought, and probably just to give a bit of a shake up, in all honesty, for a couple of boys. And yeah, it was just it was not very very good from Ireland, and there's a lot of people sort of I was sort of trying to garner the feeling after the game on social media, and it's sort of a lot of like, oh, what's Farrell doing? You know, we haven't progressed in these last couple of years, and you know, where are we now? We're left with this sort of edging squad, and now all these players that we do bring in, they don't have the experience, and certain sentiments like this, and you sort of tend to agree somewhat, but then obviously we've been so successful in the past couple of years, so yeah, a rough night for Ireland, but in all honesty, you have to tip your hat to France, don't you?
Yeah, I think they are just a very good rugby team, and you know, they had a lot of. I don't think many of their players had a poor game either, so you can't really pinpoint many weaknesses. As I say, I think clinicism and actually going after the game a little bit more, they could have done a bit more of, but you know, it's very minor points when you're still looking at a 38-14 victory or whatever it was, 36. So yeah, I think you take what you got, and you just
Yeah, they
happy
were
with
they were
the
ruthless in
result.
that first half, and I think like I was watching it, and just some of the like in and around the contact area, some of the ball handling skills that they've got, I think they are the best in the world at that sort of keeping the ball alive in those sort of tight spaces, and obviously Dupont is the king of doing that. Just absolutely fantastic. I'd probably highlight their big lock, Michael Gilliard from Lyon. He was absolutely superb, just a massive man, and he's just going about imposing himself, and it was real physical performance from the French as well. Just Ireland, anytime they tried to run into them, you know, up until 60 minutes, it was just they were getting absolutely no change out of them. And yeah, in attack, it was just relentless wave after wave pressure. I thought Jalabert was very good at 10. He scores his try. He marshals the game very well with Dupont. UBLVRA starts off with 2 tries, of course. That first one was just an absolute joke, the way he managed to get away there. The second one, with sort of the chip from Dupont, and Ramos somehow manages sort of like that kick pass ahead, and as soon as it gets into his hands, the Albiera's hands, it's try time. So it shows you how clinical they can be, Dom, as you mentioned, but that I guess if you were to be critical of them, and you'd be real critical of them, they sort of switch off in certain periods in that second half, and allowed Ireland to come back into it a little bit, and it looked like Ireland were mounting a little bit of a comeback, but I think just that, the France were eventually able to get a foothold back in the game, and I think moving into next week, France will go to Cardiff. They'll be very confident. Obviously, there's a bit of a shadow being cast over sort of allegations of payments for Antoine Dupont. We're not quite sure what the sort of situation is there, whether he'll be able to play on Saturday, what that'll mean for, would he be suspended going forward? We don't know. It's all sort of up in the air at the moment, but it's sort of an investigation into sort of sponsorships and stuff like that with him. But that being said, even going to Cardiff this week, after you consider Wales's performance at the weekend, I think they'll be very, very confident they can get another 5-pointer on the board. For Ireland, it's Italy, and it's an Italy side full of confidence, so it's going to be, I think that'll be a very interesting one to watch, and it'll be interesting to see who Farrell can bring into that team, whether he's going to trust some of the boys that maybe he brought in, like McCluskey that you mentioned, who did have a bit of success, or is he going to maybe revert back? What's the situation going to be? I think probably McCluskey will stay in, but will players like Jacob Stockdale stay in? Will Jamie Osborne stay at fullback? It all remains to be seen. But we'll move on to that second game of the weekend, which was Italy-Scotland. Dom, I remember you sort of talking last week about Rome and Rome being sunny. Well, I don't think you've got a career as a weatherman, because it was absolutely pouring down with rain in Rome. Just absolutely drenched that pitch in the second half, and we've seen that. But 18 points to 15 for Italy. I mean, what a start for them, right?
Yeah, I don't think you could ask for a better start, really, can you? Especially doing it against such a... I think doing it against Scotland first is always a bit of a nerve settler for anybody, because they are just that middle of the range team that you know that they're not necessarily going to be pushing for the title, but you know they're not going to be getting the wooden spoon. So to beat them, whether you're home or away, I think being at home, it's obviously a massive confidence boost. But yeah, it's the shock obviously so far of this tournament, but I think people are writing this game or writing Scotland off so much because of how they performed. I don't think people are then also praising how well Italy played, and I think they did play well, but 3 points in the second half, that's not ideal. And I think you can almost look to the bench for that, because I mentioned it in my video about them, in that how much firepower do they have coming off the bench? You know, they waited quite a while until they made the substitutions, because they know that the quality that they have is 15 players on the pitch, and they can't just keep them playing for the full 80. So yeah, it's a really weird one. The feelings I had coming out of that one, I think obviously Scotland were completely out of it. They should have dealt with that game so much better. There was a lack of intensity, stupid things being done. I think it was Grant Gilchrist who came completely into the side of one player. I don't know if you saw it, but literally was offside and then just like levelled one of their players in open play, and it was just really stupid decisions. But no, I think massive improvements needed to be made for Scotland, especially, you know, going to Murrayfield, defending against England, like that for the Scots. There's not many games that you want to win more than that one, and likewise for England. You know, that's a big one that we want to win, but I feel like the onus is more on them being at home. So yeah, they've got serious improvements to be made. And speaking to a couple of Scottish fans, I think their heads are already made up that if Gregor Townsend isn't gone at the end of the tournament, they'll be completely gobsmacked.
Really? Well, that's a very interesting bit of insight there. Yeah, I mean, Scotland, we I spoke about it in the preview. Pressure was on. Pressure was on after the autumn. You don't expect teams to beat the All Blacks, but when Scotland haven't done it for so long and they've got their best team that they've ever had, and they miss out again, and then they sort of compound that with a massive comeback defeat against Argentina. You know, it's 3 losses in the last 4 for Scotland, you know, with that game against Tonga, obviously, in the middle, where they absolutely walloped them. But yeah, going into this one, they had to have a good start. They had to start well and sort of, I guess, snuff out any momentum that Italy had, and they just didn't do that. You know, Italy got up with a fast start, 12-0 up in the early stages. I thought Italy's centres, as always, Menoncello and Brex, just absolutely superb. They are the jewel in the crown, in my opinion, of that Italy side. You know, they can do everything. They can truck it up. As you can see with Brex, they can kick it in behind. They've got the ball handling skills, just absolutely superb. And Italy went after them. Italy went after Scotland. They sensed a bit of weakness. I didn't think Scotland's back three particularly handled the high ball game particularly well. Italy really went for that. Louis Lina was superb, scoring a try obviously in that early stages. And Italy just went high quite a lot, and it seemed to get a lot of dividends for them. Garbisi was really good at 10, and it was just fantastic performance from Italy. They dominated the scrum as well. I haven't seen Italy's defence, Dom, as sort of, I can't remember seeing them as resolute as that for such long periods, such long phases as I've seen in that game. You know, they were really like keeping Scotland out wave after wave of attack, and you know, this is a Scotland team that are, you know, they're full of firepower, they're full of big forwards, big men in the pack, and then, you know, star quality out in the backs, and they just weren't able to get much change out of them. I guess you could say Jack Dempsey, he was very good at number 8. Probably one of the only brighter sparks, as well as I guess George Horn coming on off the bench. He was very good as well. But yeah, line out issues for Scotland as well. Just sort of Turner coming on, and Ashman as well. Just sort of not quite getting it right. And when it's a rainy day like that, Dom, you have to get your set piece right, and they were coughing up the ball at their own line out, and then the scrum was just not, it was not getting the upper hand, and it's a very tough day when you can't get either of those things working. Thought in the second half they sort of did a little bit better, but it was never too much. It always seemed like Italy were going to win the game. I think that's quite worrying for Scotland. Even when Horn scored that, I was sort of like, right, well, here's Scotland go, but can they really? I don't think they've shown enough in this game that they'll actually turn it around. And the pressure's on for Gregor Townsend. You'd venture to say the biggest game in his Scottish management career, because I think you would probably say, with all the conversations that have been having in and around the media, it would seem everybody thinks that this is going to be the make or break game in his Scottish management career. There's been chat about Franco Smith, I think, the Glasgow coach. Whether that's probably purely speculation for the time being, of course, but he is there. So yeah, it's absolutely huge for Scotland heading in. I suppose it's the best kind of fixture for them to head in, with all the emotion behind it and with the record they have against England. But it's an England side that have struggled to lose recently, Dom. It's been, what's that, 12 games now on the bounce that you have won.
Something like that.
Whereas Italy, on the other side of that, they'll head into Dublin with just like a free hit. They've got an Irish side that are struggling a little bit, and they go to Dublin. No one really expects them probably to win, really. They've got that first win, the pressure's sort of off, they can play their rugby. And yeah, just a great time for Italian rugby, and not such a great time for Scottish rugby at the minute. But we'll mentioned England, so we'll move into them. England against Wales at Twickenham. I think we were all expecting England to win, Dom, and to probably win fairly convincingly. But what about the performance from Wales? Because I think there's been a lot of chat around sort of it not being up to the level, even despite the lack of quality in comparison to England.
I think it was more player selection than anything else. I think England just are too good for them. They killed the game. They didn't give Wales a scratch, but also Wales didn't have any players to give them anything, give them that go forward. I mean, Reece Samet tried his best, Dan Edwards tried his best, but equally you got people like Ben Thomas who just give absolutely nothing. And the performances he's been putting in compared to how he's been playing in Cardiff have just been astonishing. Like how it differs so much is beyond me. He just looks so panicked when he's in a Wales jersey, and I mean, for Cardiff fans it's really disappointing. But
yeah, well, I suppose it's international standard, isn't it? So is it just a big level up?
It is a big step up, but equally when you've already got 10 plus caps, 15 plus caps to your name already, those jitters should be gone. And I'm not saying that playing at Twickenham against England in the opening game of the Six Nations isn't a scary occasion, but you've been playing for rugby for the majority of your life. It doesn't change just for one game or for certain games. So I think he should be far away from that Wales squad this week. I mean, it's difficult because they've got the two toughest teams in the tournament to go first. But hopefully, it's almost like thrown in the deep end, get smashed twice, and then hopefully rebuild build up to something, and give them something to cheer about come the latter stages of the tournament.
Would you bring in for? I mean, I tend to agree with you. To be honest, I don't think centre options for Wales are not particularly great. To be honest, I don't think currently Ben Thomas is at that sort of level to be the Welsh number 12. But then you sort of look around and who is? Is it Max Llewellyn? Is it? You think of people like Joe Hawkins and stuff like that, and different players like that. But sort of
Max Llewellyn's. Yeah, Max Llewellyn's the first one that comes to mind for me. But I guess injury has kind of left him out for the time being, and the fact that Blair Murray's not there, it seriously baffled me that you haven't got some of your best players who are fit and available to play, just not there. So I think more than anything, player selection was a big letdown. Discipline as well just kind of went out the window. Like Dewey Lack getting sent off straight after Nick Tompkins did. Just ridiculous. Like, you're the captain of your country, and after he's already come and said to you, right, multiple offences, you're going off, comes in and does another offence, and then it's like, oh, why have I been sent off? It's like, it was just panicked. It was poor disciplined. It was, just a not very good day if you're a Wales fan.
It was really it was an awful day. I think I was watching it as you know, with our good friend Thomas, who's a proud Welshman, and we were just watching it. I was just saying to him, you can forgive it for a lack of, quality compared with the English, because there is there's such a chasm between the two sides in terms of quality of players. I think we all know that, but I think it was the lack of intent in terms of attack, and I guess sort of courage on the ball, and just in certain cases just not getting to the ball. I'm not necessarily saying a lack of effort, but just heads maybe dropping a bit too much, and it's just I think it was less than what this Welsh team could have done. I think this Welsh team could have gone out there. They could have made life a wee bit more difficult for England. I'm not saying they would have won. I don't think they would. There's many scenarios where that game ends in anything other than a convincing England win. But I think just the lack of sort of intent and I guess courage on the ball was just, and then the lack of sort of maybe organisation in defence. It was just very, very poor from Wales, and it doesn't get any easier. It's France in Cardiff, and I think I heard Dan Bigger speaking about it on the rugby pod, and he's saying they need to just go out and just show a bit of something. I think we all know that they're. Well, he didn't say this, so I'm adding my own words in here, but I think we know they're all not going to win the game this weekend, most likely. It'd be astonishing if they did, but they need to show a lot more than they did against England. They need to show a bit more desire, but a bit more, courage, a bit more intent. I keep saying those words, but it just seems the correct ones to use. The sort of thing they did against New Zealand, where they tried to get the ball wide. They really tried to get up on the line and hit the All Blacks before the gain line, and I think that's just, they need to show just some real fight this week and just make it difficult for France. And really try and land a couple of punches on them, because that was just abysmal, to be honest. There's no other word about it. I think the only positive you mentioned about Blair Murray being out of the side, I think Louis Rees-Zammit did do quite well at fullback, all things considered. I think he was probably the only bright spark, really. But at the same time, I think you're all sort of scratching your heads and looking at Blair Murray out of the squad, and he gives a little bit of dynamism. He gives some speed as well. So I think you'd imagine he'll be back in this week alongside Louis Rees-Zammit, whether that's on 15 or on the wing. But on an England standpoint, would you say you learned anything about that performance?
Not really. It was very much rinse and repeat. It was the same that we've seen in the autumn. It was very convincing. It was very, very quick, very expansive, and I like how we're playing. Kicking is not essential. It's almost like a pressure reliever, but it's done at the right times. It's not just a panic like, oh right, what do we do? George Ford and Alex Mitchell, the axis that they've got going on there is really strong. And defensively we're very good, quite disciplined. I think it was opening 20 minutes or something, opening 30 minutes. England are giving away 1 penalty and Wales are giving away 9. So, whether that's just the opposition, it's hard to tell. But I think it's definitely more steps in the right direction. As you say, 12 wins in a row now. We should have had a couple of more tries. I thought they would have maybe seen out the game a little bit more as well, because I feel like if it came down to it, points difference could really come into play in the tournament. And so the best time to get those points is against the weakest opposition in Wales. So yeah, I thought maybe chase a couple more tries. We had a couple disallowed, justly or not. I won't comment on now, but yeah, I thought they'd just maybe see it out a little bit more and, embarrass the Welsh a little bit more than they did.
So that's what you wanted to see as a diehard Englishman. Yeah, I think England's George Ford, as you say, just absolutely fantastic. I mean, I don't know what Wales were thinking and sort of trying to sort of have a kicking battle with him, because he's just going to win that 10 times out of 10, basically, isn't he? Yeah. Henry Arundel hat trick. You know, he was not many touches for the guy, to be honest, but he was there to finish off three of his chances. I think, as you say, it wasn't perfect. I guess the bench probably didn't have the impact that they've had in previous games in terms of, I guess, impacting the result, but I guess the result was already sort of it was already wrapped up by that stage, and it maybe just like, yeah, it was the game sort of lulled away a wee bit. But that'll probably be something Borthwick will be looking at in terms of can we try and up the levels, and try and get back to that sort of that POM squad effect again against Scotland this week. But yeah, good start for England. Not a perfect start somehow after winning 48-7 against the Welsh, but yeah, a good start nonetheless. And we'll move into that game, because I think it is the game of the weekend. It's not the first game of the weekend, but it is undoubtedly the game of the weekend, which is the Calcutta Cup, which will be played on Saturday afternoon, the later kickoff. Steve Borthwick's gone early again with his squad, and not many changes to the side, apart from Maro Itoje, who comes back in and captains the side, with Alex Coles dropping to the bench. What do you make of the no change in team? Do you think that's fair enough, or do you think you'd bring in anyone else?
No, I think it's pretty spot on. I mean, if you've got a system, I love this phrase, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The only other change as well is Luke Cowan-Dickey starting at hooker, and I think that's just to bring grit for the first 50, 60, 55 minutes. He will just bully his opposite number, and then when it comes into the latter stages of the game, you've got Jamie George to come on, who will just give you dart after dart after dart, and just be hitting everything with a 20 pence piece. So yeah, I think I don't mind those two changes. Maro is always going to come back in. He's had a lot of personal issues going on that. Fair enough. Borthwick was just like, out of all games, you can sit this one out. Gather yourself and don't put the pressure on at the minute. So yeah, there's a lot going on in his head. So hopefully it all sorts itself out. But the only other change that I'm very interested by is Finn Smith replacing Marcus Smith on the bench. Now, Marcus is an asset in the sense that he's a bit of a utility. He can come on at 10 and then you can kind of shift other people around him. He then becomes the guy that the team is almost being built around. Whereas putting Finn Smith on, he kind of can only play 10. I wouldn't necessarily be jumping for joy if he came on at 15. So yeah, I don't know the thinking behind that, whether it's just to give George Ford a bit of a break and not have him complete in another 80 minutes, and I'm not sure, or whether it's an injury to Marcus and they just want that 10 cover. I don't really know, but it'll be interesting to see that POM squad as well. Like you say, it's going to be rocking once again and on top form, and I think it'll be another victory. I don't see Scotland making much of an improvement. I think their heads are just so down. It's a mental battle more than anything else. We know that they've got the ability. They're praised and lauded as this golden era of Scottish rugby. So that hasn't changed because the players haven't really changed. So if he picks the right back three, actually include Darcy Graham, actually include Blair Kinghorn, because as you mentioned it earlier, that back three looked like they really struggled against Italy. And I know that the rain probably had a factor as well, but have some reliancy. Bring experience back into the squad. People who have played against England before, have beaten England before, and can go, come on boys, this is well within our grasp, and cause an upset. But whether that'll happen, I don't know. England I just don't see England really losing too soon.
Yeah, well, it'll be an interesting one for sure. I think you mentioned about Scotland maybe welcoming some players back, and I think they will have to sort of change it up, just because I think that performance wasn't really good enough by their standards, and from an English point of view, heading to Scotland, Scotland famously don't finish so well in games as well as they start. So I think that could be a real sort of thing that they look at in terms of bringing players on there and trying to sort of get at Scotland in the closing stages, because that's when Test matches are won at the end of the day. But it's a big game, and Scotland have to respond. They have to really. Well, they need to win, realistically. I think if they lose again, then it puts them in sort of quite a perilous position. I know they'll have to go to Cardiff next week. They'll be favourites for that. But still, it's a huge game for them. Any predictions? I know you said an England win there, but what do you reckon the score would be? Or the points?
Something along the lines of 33-18, I'd say.
Okay, right, that's a fair size. This is a big one, actually. I did sort of say in my prediction last week that I think Scotland would beat you at Murrayfield, but I'm not too confident on that in the minute. I think it is one of those games where a lot of pressure is on, and I'm not sure if they've got this one in the bag this time. I'm going to go for a very sort of small margin of victory for the English. I think I'm probably going to go England by 4 points. I think it'll be a very tight game. I think I don't think you'll take it away from them, because I think you're not on that sort of stage in your sort of development where you're like South Africa, where you can just like absolutely rip teams apart, and but I think you will finally get over that Murrayfield hoodoo and get your first win there in 6 years. It would be so yeah. But moving on to Wales, which we had touched on, of course, playing England. They have got France this Sunday, 3:10 kick-off. Is this just a formality for France, or what do you think we can see from both sides? Even
I think we'll see a bit of a different France squad. I think we'll see one who Galtier might be thinking, right, you've not really had much of a chance. You've been shining in the top 14 this season. Let's give you a run out. I don't think he'll change many players. I think players like Olivon, like Guillard, like Malvaca, like Marchand, like Dupont, like Jalibert, they'll still all be playing. But I think it'll just be different players, maybe a couple of centres, a couple of props, a couple of back rowers. I reckon they might come into the squad just to give them some experience, because, as I mentioned before, 20 months out from a World Cup, you've got to start thinking, if stuff really hits the fan, where do we look for people coming in? And I think it's something that coaches are afraid to do, is look at your other potential options, because you don't, especially at a top level as well. I think it's just, you've got to put some faith in some uncapped players or very low capped players, because at some point or another, you might have to rely on them. So I think we'll see a bit of a different France squad. Maybe a bit of an improved Wales squad in terms of personnel, but I think, like you say, it's going to be a routine win. Wales would be very happy to take away a couple of points from this. I think to make it not an embarrassment, they need to go for scoreboard pressure, because that's as well how you build a bit of momentum, build a bit of confidence in the squad. But I think, this could be, potentially 50-odd points in favour of France.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, as you say, they'll need to welcome some new players, I think, back into the squad. You mentioned about the centres there. They do have some options there. They could bring Mason Grady in at 13 there. Got Owen Watkin, who's got 43 caps. Got a couple of these players that they could potentially. I mentioned Joe Hawkins as well. But we'll see what happens with that. He sticks with Eddie James and Ben Thomas. But yeah, I think Blair Murray is more than likely to return, and I think he will add a little bit of spark for them. And yeah, I think they just have to go for them, Dom, and sort of see how many punches they can land, see if they can, can you've seen France sort of drift off for certain periods of last week. Can Wales get a couple of tries on board? Could they, it'd be a stretch to say, could they get a try bonus point? You'd say they'd be very unlikely to get a losing bonus point in this game. So we'll see what happens there. But I'd probably predict in this one, it'd be France probably by 30 points, to be honest. I don't really see I don't see any sort of closer than that personally, unless
No.
France have an off day. But I think they will just sort of carry on the momentum because they'll want to build that with you welcoming you guys in the final day, of course. But moving on to the other game of the weekend, Ireland Italy. This is a big one for Andy Farrell, very big one. A lot of sort of pressure on him, sort of to deliver a performance and a result here against an Italy side who are no longer the whipping boys of the Six Nations. They're very much a very good Test international side. What do you think that's going to happen in this one? Do you think Italy can shock the world?
I think the competency of Ireland will shine through. I think Andy Farrell has probably had to come to terms with a lot of truths in himself and with personnel choices. And I think he's kind of got rid of some of those already. I think he's got to start doing more of them. I think if he plays Sam Prendergast at 10 again, they're going to lose. That is my honest opinion, because it's like losing a limb. Like, you know, he's just adding absolutely nothing. Okay, you can say that his kicks are pretty pinpoint sometimes when it's a penalty or something. Brilliant. You know, but so can Crowley can do that as well. So, and Crowley can actually have a bit of defensive competency too. But yeah, he looks like a teenager who's streaking on the pitch. He just should not be anywhere near that squad.
I have to disagree for a certain aspect, Dom. I think defensively you're absolutely right. He looks very, very small out there, and he's not great in defence. But I think he does bring something in attack. There's no doubt about that. His ability to spot space and his kicking ability, it is absolutely fantastic, and I think he is. I think he gets a lot of flack. I think he really does need to bulk up if he is going to be an international player. If Ireland are going to be a real contender in certainly his career. But I think he has that raw attacking ability, the ability to spot space, the ability to kick. I just think he is, you say losing a limb, I think in defence, yes. In attack, I think he does add quite a bit. But yeah, that would be my opinion on it.
Question for you then. What does he bring that Crowley doesn't?
I think he's better at spotting space than Crowley. Would he be better at kicking than Crowley? They're probably on an even pegging there. I think it's just the identification of space and just like that, those ball handling skills. I think they are better than Crowley's, but I think Crowley is more equipped to play international rugby than he is, purely because of his size and just his, I guess, teams don't really go after Crowley as much. I think Crowley also, I agree, I'd bring Crowley in, I would start Crowley. But I think you saw against France, when Prendergast and Crowley were on the same pitch together, you saw like a lot of good stuff, which I think speaks a lot about the qualities of both and how they can sort of complement each other. Could that be something that you say maybe?
Even that decision was confusing to me, because I thought Tommy O'Brien was having a good game, so why,
I think it was a point to sort of, they were struggling to break down the French defence, so they sort of wanted to playmakers on the pitch to sort of try and dictate the game. But yeah, I think Crowley's got probably more minerals to play international Test rugby than Prendergast. I think he's won the URC. He's spearheaded that Munster team that won it. He's got a real bit of, not nastiness in him, but he's like he'll put himself about, like he'll put himself in the firing line. And yeah, I would start him, Dom. I would tend to agree with that, but I just think maybe I think Prendergast could maybe catch a little bit less flack than he is. But what would be your prediction for this game then? Do you think it'll be close, or what do you think?
I think it will be a bit close. Italy will bring the fight. Playing in Dublin is a scary occasion as well. I wouldn't say it's the scariest occasion out of all Six Nations away days, but it's definitely up there. But no, I think Ireland realise the work that they have to do. I think they know that they're not going to win the tournament. They can't lose to Italy. Like, they just can't. I don't think they ever have in their Six Nations history, if I'm correct.
Well, they have. They lost to them in 2013. They've never lost to them in Dublin. They never lost to them.
Well, yeah, there you go. So, yeah, I think there's weight on this game without it, being as black and white as Ireland versus Italy. But no, they've got to step up and deliver, and I think they will. I think they've got the minerals, they've got the right coach, they've got the players in the squad, they've got the experience, they've got everything that is there to lift them up again. So I think it'll be Ireland by, I'd say, 11.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too far away from you there. I think it will be a little bit closer. I think it'll be 7 points between the two sides. I think it'll get a losing bonus point. Because I think they are on a real high confidence wave, and they're playing some really good rugby, and Ireland are, they will need this week to sort of consolidate themselves and, get back to basics and, win the game, and I don't think it'll be by a big margin personally. So I'd go for Ireland by 7. So a lot of implications for this weekend, but that has been everything on episode 2, season 4 of the Ruck and Roll Show. Thank you very much for watching. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye bye.